Hello, and welcome back to the International Studies and Stories podcast. I'm your host, Brett, and today I'm joined by Alex. I'm going to let her introduce herself and her role. But yeah,
Hi, everyone, and hi, Brett. Thanks for having me. My name's Alex Warren, and I am the Immigration and Compliance Manager here at the University of Huddersfield.
great, thank you. So, yeah, today's episode is going to be focused on visas and any tips and tricks that we have for you. So, thank you for joining us today, Alex.
Thank you for having me.
I guess we'll get kind of straight into it. So, I guess the best place to start is kind of with the basics. So, could you just tell us what a student visa is and why someone needs one?
Yeah, anybody that comes to the UK for a period of time to undertake study or work or whatever they intend to do generally needs to have a visa and permission to come into the UK for a set period of time. So Uh, anybody that wants to come and study at a university in the UK, generally speaking, will need a student visa. So that's why you need one, because you can't enter the UK and you can't study, you can't be enrolled at university without the correct immigration permissions.
Great. And how do you go about getting a visa then?
So you need to apply through the UKVI website. You need to complete a form, an online form, and submit that with all the necessary requirements. And you submit that, and then you, generally speaking, need to attend a visa application centre in your home country. Um, and once you've done all of that and the visa's approved, then you'll get that back, and you'll be then able to make your plans to come to the UK.
Great. So it's to my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the kind of required documents you need to apply for a visa is something called a CAS,
Yep.
which is a term that I think we use quite a lot, just like that. But for the viewers that don't understand what that means, could you just explain
Yeah, of
what?
course. Yeah, you'll hear the term CAS being kind of bandied around quite a lot. And what it stands for is Confirmation of Acceptance for Studies. And the CAS is issued by the university. So once you've met all the conditions of your offer and you've got an unconditional offer in place, then the university will then be in a position to issue you with a CAS. Um, it's really important because you won't be able to submit your visa application without the CAS. It's a unique document that's got a specific reference number that is relevant to that particular student running a particular course. They're coming to study a particular program, and there's a specific start and end date, really. And that's why it's essential that you get the CAS. It's unique to you, and you can't make the application without it, basically.
Okay, so very very
Yeah,
important part
yeah,
then.
it is. Yeah, it's fundamental, really.
I guess one of the other important parts is we might as well get out right off the bat. The financial
Yeah.
kind of needs for that. I was wondering if you could talk about.
Yeah, sure. In order to make a visa application, a student visa application to come to the UK, you need your CAS, and that gives you 30 points. And then you need to meet the financial criteria, and that gives you a further 10 points that you need to get the visa through. So the finances are there because the UKVI want students to be in a position to support themselves once they're here financially. They're not eligible to any public funds that UK nationals might be eligible to get. So you have to be self-supporting, and the way that the UKVI expect somebody to demonstrate that is that they have to have held a particular amount of funds in their bank account for a minimum period of time. So currently, you need to have £10,244 in your bank account, in addition to any outstanding tuition fees that you might have for that first year of study. So, for example, if your tuition fees are £18,000, for example, and you've paid 9,000 as a deposit, um, you'd then have to show that you'd got the 9,000, which is the outstanding tuition fees, plus the £10,244, which is the maintenance requirement that the UKVI expect you to have when you enter the UK. So there's quite a lot of money involved. It's quite significant sums, and students really need to be thinking about that and whether they can afford it and how much they can get together in time to submit a visa application.
Yeah, definitely quite a lot of planning that goes into that then.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then in terms of bank account, whose bank account is it in? Is it yours? Can it be in someone else's? Or
It's a good question. It can be in your own personal bank account, um, and it can also be in your parents' account. Okay, so it can't be an auntie or an uncle or a friend or a brother or a pastor. Um, it has to be a parent. And when you submit that, if it is your parents' bank account, you'll need to submit your birth certificate, which evidences the relationship, along with a letter of consent from your parents. So there are quite a few rules and regulations surrounding that, um, but those are the two really main categories for bank statements. If you are a sponsored student and you're government sponsored, so your government's paying for your fees, then that's you don't need to submit a bank statement. You need a letter of support from your government. And in certain circumstances, if you're sponsored by an international company, for example, a big international oil company, um, they can also pay for your fees as well, and a letter of support from them will suffice to meet the financial requirements.
yeah, it's definitely quite a lot of different pathways then.
There are quite a lot of different pathways, yeah, and it can be a bit confusing at first. Um, So, if you've got any questions about that, I'd just urge you to have a look on our website, make contact with the team here at Huddersfield, and we can offer you, a bit of help and support and guidance just to unpick that if you feel that you're a bit confused by it all.
That's great. Yeah, you do offer quite a lot of like workshops and stuff.
We do. We run webinars. We've got quite a lot of step-to-step guides that we can send out to people via email. We can meet with students or applicants on Teams and chat through a few things. So there's a lot of channels that we offer, um, in ways that we can, sort of help students and applicants so that they get it right and they understand what they need to do because it's quite a stressful time.
I can imagine. Gosh. So then obviously there's the financial requirements to prove that you can move to the UK and support yourself. What about the actual cost of applying for a visa and getting a visa? What's that involved?
Again, you need to be prepared to pay the necessary fees. Um, so at the moment, the visa application fee is £490 per person. So if you're applying with dependents, you need to be able to pay that for each of those dependents as well. And you also have to pay the immigration health surcharge, which is a fee that you need to pay that allows you to access the NHS services once you're in the UK. And that fee is £776 per year of study. So obviously, if you're studying a 1 year program, you just pay that fee. If you're studying a undergraduate 4 year program, then you'd have to pay that for each year of study for 4 years. So it can be quite expensive. So again, that's something that we ask people to kind of plan in advance because you're going to need to make that payment when you submit your visa application. So you have to have means to do that.
Yeah, of course. So then there's like the financial requirements, the CAS. Is there anything else that a person might need document wise?
Yeah, some students will need a TB certificate. If you are from a certain country that has a prevalence of TB, then one of the UKVI requirements is that you have a certificate that confirms you're free from TB. So have a look on the UKVI website, and that will tell you whether you're a national of one of those countries. And my advice is that if you do need a TB certificate, it's something that you should think about sooner rather than later, because only certain clinics are permitted to issue those certificates. And in some countries, there's quite a waiting list to get on, to get an appointment to get the TB certificate, and it might not be close to where you live. So again, think about that in advance, and that's one of the first things I'd recommend that you do. And then you've got that. That's one thing that's ticked off your list of to do, really.
Okay, cool. So let's imagine I'm an international student. I've applied, I've met my requirements, so I've got my CAS, I've had the money in my account for 28 days, I've got my TB certificate, I've submitted it all, I've paid. What happens now?
So, what can happen is that the UKVI might call you for an interview. So this doesn't happen in all cases, but students need to be aware that they might be called for an interview. It's usually via Teams, and it's usually conducted by UKVI staff based in the UK in Sheffield. So one thing I'd say is that students really need to keep an eye on their inbox, because the UKVI will email them to the email address that they put on their application form. And check your email and check your junk mail, because sometimes those emails get
Sometimes
put
they do,
into
yeah. The amount of
into
emails I miss.
yeah,
Spam.
it happens quite a lot. So just keep a regular eye on both those inboxes, because they'll email you, and if you don't attend, then that could lead to a refusal. The other thing is that they might ask you questions as well. They might want a little bit more information, and they might email you about that. And again, you'll have a certain period of time in which to respond to that email. If you don't respond, then again, they might refuse you. So just keep an eye on your inboxes, and just be really live to the fact that they might contact you. If they do want to speak to you about your application, then it's really important that you go to that interview and you're well prepared. Okay, and I understand that it can be a bit nerve wracking um, for students to feel that they're kind of being interviewed by the UKVI, but they will ask you a series of questions based on your choice of course. So my advice is to be really well prepared, to have done your research, look at what the modules are on the program, think about which ones you're particularly interested in and why you've selected that course, what modules you think might be really relevant to your future career plans, or where you want to take your qualification and what you want to do with it, because they expect you to have an in-depth knowledge of what you're going to study. So that's really important. It's also really important that you can offer an explanation as to why you've chosen the university that you've chosen, why you've chosen to study in the UK, because we know that a lot of students also think about studying in the USA or Canada or Australia. And again, they'll ask you whether you've thought about studying in other countries, and if you have, why you've chosen the UK. So I can't emphasize enough how important it is to have done some good preparation and be ready to answer questions about that, because the Home Office at that point are expecting you to demonstrate that you are a genuine student, you've got genuine intent to study in the UK, and you're serious about it. So it's really essential that you go to that interview and you're ready to answer those questions. They can also ask you about where your money's coming from, how you're going to support yourself. So again, be ready to answer those kind of questions.
Yeah, so I guess in a sense, and forgive my very, very like broad generalization, but um, you could probably look at it like another form of like a personal statement. Like they're the
Absolutely.
kind of things you'd include when you're talking about why you want to study at Huddersfield or the
Absolutely,
unis.
Brett. Yeah, and I would say what makes a key difference when we've done some of these mock interviews with students is kind of a ring of authenticity. So don't just read the website and regurgitate that. Have a real think about what's meaningful for you. So there might be a particular part of the course that you're really interested in. And you might be able to say, oh, well, actually, I wanted to come to Huddersfield because, I've read some work by this professor and I know he's going to be teaching this particular module, and it really interests me because I want to move into this kind of area. And I like this module at Huddersfield because I thought of other courses and at other institutions, but they didn't have this one and they didn't have this guy. And that's why I really want to go there. And that is, it's really authentic, it's your voice, and it's really genuine. And it's that kind of detail that I think is quite kind of realistic. And it then makes that the caseworker that's considering it thinks, well, do you know what, actually, yeah, that's a tick for this student. So it's just thinking about it and thinking what matters to you, really. I think that's really important.
Yeah, of course. There obviously isn't it, so it sounds like there's not really a set requirement of like this. It's just very personal.
I think it's personal, and I think you just need to have a good knowledge of why you've made those decisions that have led you to where you are.
Well, hopefully that puts people's nerves kind of
Yeah,
at ease
I
then,
hope
because
so. And again, there's a bit of information there on our website. Some kind of areas that you might want to think about before you do, before you go for your interview.
and then obviously you mentioned mock interviews. That's something that your team provides.
Sometimes we do, yeah. In certain circumstances, we can help with that. And again, if you've used an agent, it's worth chatting to your agent because a lot of the time they've got a lot of experience of these kind of things, and so it's worth speaking to them as well. Or if you're involved with, if there's a country officer that you've been, talking to about your application again, they've got a lot of information that they can help you with. So there's a lot of support there available. And I'd just advise you to kind of take that if you feel you want to.
Okay, great, thank you. And then this is kind of my last question. Just wondering if you have any like final top tips for applicants when it comes to visa.
Yeah, I would say the most important thing is to be prepared early. So there's a lot of working backwards when you come to submit your visa application. So my advice is have a think about when you intend to come to the UK. So we recommend that students are here in good time so that they're settled and they can then start their induction. So think about when you want to enter the UK. I would say give yourself 6 to 8 weeks from submission of the visa application, at least to getting a decision. The UKVI say there's usually a 15-day turnaround, but my experience is that at busy times like the summer, it can often take longer than that. So, in order to avoid stress, do it as early as you can. Give yourself plenty of time to get the outcome and then to be able to prepare to come to the UK in good time. And when you submit your visa application, don't forget that prior to that, you're going to have had that money in your bank account for at least a month. So think about putting the money in your account 6 weeks before the date that you intend to submit that visa application. So you could be looking at 3 to 4 months before you intend to arrive in the UK to have everything in place so that things run as smoothly as possible. Because you're here for a reason, and that's to study. And the visa application part of it is quite a stressful time. You're coming to the UK, you're starting to study in a new country, that's all quite stressful. So if you can take out some of that stress and anxiety at an earlier point by just being ready early, that's really what I'd recommend. Particularly at busy times like the summer surge period, when there's a lot of students in your position and everything's busy and chaotic. So that's really my top tip, I would say. Think about it in advance, be prepared. If you've got any questions, come straight to the experts. Don't listen to your uncle, your brother, your dog, your budgie, all those people who are there to give you advice. Come to the experts. In this case, I'd come direct to us at Huddersfield to the visa team because we'll be able to give you the answer. We can cut out any of that jargon, that you might not be sure about, um, and listen to the people who know what they're talking about. Really, would be my advice.
Okay, well, so that does mark the end of my questions. So we will take a quick little break, and then we'll be back for a segment It's a new one that I'm very excited about. Obviously, you were on our Instagram earlier this
Yeah.
week. For those of you who saw Alex, um, and we had some students submit some questions
Great.
for you. So we'll look at those in
Fabulous.
a few
Yeah,
minutes.
super. Look forward to that.
Hello, listeners. Sorry to interrupt, but did you know that the University of Huddersfield has several online international information days every year? These exciting free live events are designed for prospective international students. You can experience engaging academic student panels and practical presentations from our international office and dedicated support staff, such as immigration experts and careers advisors, all from the comfort of your home. If you have questions about studying in the UK, you can get them answered by our knowledgeable and friendly team at these international information days. This is your opportunity to understand why Huddersfield is a popular choice for international students and how we can help you achieve your academic and career goals. To find out more and secure your place, visit our webpage, type hud.ac.trn. So that's hud.ac/TRN. Thank you.
Welcome back. As promised, we're going to move on to the segment now where we ask Alex some of your questions from Instagram. We had some great responses, so thank you to everyone who replied. Please don't be offended if we don't get to your question. We've tried to get through as many as we can, and I do apologise if I pronounce anyone's name wrong, but we'll just get into it.
Fire away.
So, Hashim asked, how long before starting studies should you become serious about applying for a visa or CAS?
Well, that's a great question. And it's kind of something we talked about a little bit
Yeah, a
earlier
little
on,
bit.
isn't it? Um, I'd say to Hashim that really he needs to be making sure that he meets the conditions of his offer as soon as possible. So whatever they are, probably include paying a deposit. The sooner he pays that, the sooner he'll be able to get his CAS. And once he gets his CAS, he then needs to be submitting that visa application. And I would say a minimum, if possible, of 3 months uh, to start thinking about getting the money in his account so it sits there for long enough. But the sooner the better, really. But I think really a minimum of 3 to 4 months he needs to be getting that money in his bank account so he's ready to go.
Yeah, definitely. Just straight from the bat as soon as you can. Go
That's it.
for it. So then Mohan asked about an extension for an enrollment. Like, how does that work? Is that possible?
No, not really. Um, because the teaching schedule starts, there's limited capacity for how long we can go, for students to be late. So there's usually 2 or 3 weeks, but beyond that, then it's not really possible. And what we'd say is if you think you're going to be late because there's I don't know, whatever reason, it might be a delay with obtaining your visa, let us know as soon as possible because we can help you defer to the next intake. So yeah, it's really important that you work towards getting here as soon as you can within that time frame, and don't rely on coming later because if you are too late, you won't be able to enrol. So just keep in contact with us, really.
Yeah, that's not really a Huddersfield specific rule either, is it?
No,
Most
it isn't.
unis.
No, that would be across the board, really. I would say, yeah.
Yeah, so fortunately, it's obviously we offer the deferrals, which is
Yeah,
a great
definitely.
thing.
And what we don't want to do is for students to come to study, to be paying a lot of money for their fees, to then miss quite a lot of the course, and then you kind of not maximizing your opportunities really because you're missing quite important chunks of time, particularly with a master's program,
Mm-hmm.
which is quite it's quite
It's so
constrained
condensed,
really.
aren't
They
they?
really are.
Yeah,
And you miss more than a few weeks and it can really have an impact on you. So it's really in your own best interest to get here as soon as you can, really.
Lucy asked. Well, Lucy said, "I'm from France, so she wants to come to the UK to study. She's wondering if she needs a visa."
She does need a visa if she is coming for more than 6 months. And she's coming to do a program that lasts more than 6 months. she will need a student visa if she doesn't have EU settled status. So yes, EU students are the same. If students from the EU are coming on a exchange programme, which we sometimes have, and that's for less than 6 months, then they can come into the UK on a visit visa, which they can apply for on arrival. But any longer than that, and they will need a CAS and a student visa in the way that every other international student does.
Great, thank you. Precious said, am I allowed to work on a student visa?
Good question from Precious there. Yes, obviously the priority for students is study, and that's the focus of their visa. But they are permitted to work up to 20 hours per week during term time. So the key points to remember there are that the 20 hours a week is a maximum. It's not an average. You can't do 24 hours one week and 16 the next. And secondly, you are allowed to work full time outside of term time. But the thing to remember there is that vacation periods vary depending on the programme that you're doing. So an undergraduate would have the long summer holiday and they could work full time during that. But that isn't the same for a master's student. When the master's student's on in the dissertation period, it's not a holiday. Even though they're not attending classes, they're still expected to be engaged in study. So that isn't a holiday period. So they'd only be able to do the 20 hours per week there. And for PhD students, certainly at University of Huddersfield, they get, I think it's 35 days annual leave, and those are the only times that they're permitted to work full time throughout the year. That will vary, I think, probably dependent on different institutions. It's also important to remember that institutions as well might have a limit on the amount of hours that they like you to work.
Yeah, I was just going to
per
mention.
week.
So at this uni, it's 16 hours, I think it is, that they
I
recommend that
think
you
so.
work to manage your studies on time. And I will add to that. I work part time myself, and 16 hours is a lot.
Yeah,
So it's a lot to manage with your studies and with everything else.
yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I do understand why that's kind of the limit there.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it?
Yeah. So we do have another work related one. So Mohammed says his course comes with a placement. So he's wondering how the visa work restrictions work around that.
Okay, so if you are on a visa for a course that's got a work placement, that's permitted. So you're allowed to work full time during the work placement period. Um, the when we issue a CAS for a course with a work placement, we tell the Home Office that it's got a work placement. So they're aware that there's a work placement element on the course. And also, when a student starts the work placement, we tell the Home Office that they're commencing the work placement. So they understand that the student's on a work placement. So there's no time limit on the work placement period. And in fact, you are also permitted to work the 20 hours in addition to that. But obviously, that is quite tough if it's full time work placement. Then that's quite difficult to manage. But we do understand that sometimes work placements might be unpaid or they might be low pay. So sometimes students need to do that. But I mean, I would advise against it because it is quite a tough.
Yeah, definitely. I did placement and I was doing like 37.5 hours a week, Monday through Friday. So you get to the weekend and you want to sleep. You
Yeah,
don't
you
want to.
need
You
you,
don't want to go and do 20 more hours of
you
work.
need a break, don't you? You
Yeah.
need a bit of off time.
Definitely,
Yeah.
it's a need. And then the final question that we have time for today is from Susie. So she said, I'm finishing my music for sound and screen degree in summer, and I want to do a master's in creative music production. Both very interesting courses. She's wondering if she needs to go home to get a new visa for that master's.
She probably doesn't. So if you are progressing academically, so like she is, She's going from a bachelor's to a master's, so that's academically progressing. She's permitted to make a visa extension in the UK because she's progressing academically, and also her visa for the bachelor's will probably cover her for the start of the next programme. So as long as she's submitted that visa application in time, she will be able to do that in the UK. And the benefit to her is that, certainly for us here at the University of Huddersfield, we'd be able to help her with that. So I've got a team of visa advisors who are available to offer advice and support to progressing students who want to make a visa application from within the UK. It's free of charge, and obviously that's a service that we offer to our students, and it really minimises any risk that they've got of making a mistake, really. So we help them through it. So yeah, that's definitely a bonus, I would say, for students that are interested in moving on to another programme in the UK. Making that application in the UK it's the same cost in terms of the application fee, but obviously they don't have the cost of returning home and making an application from overseas and returning back again. Obviously they've also got our support there. And it's worth reminding people as well that if you've been in the UK for 12 months or more, when you come to make a new visa application or an extension, you don't need to submit your bank statements, because you've already demonstrated, as far as the UKVI are concerned, that you are almost like a trustworthy student who can manage their finances. And so you don't need to submit all those bank statements that you would do if you were making an application from overseas. So that's a real benefit, actually.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so that is all of our questions. So, Alex, thank you for your time today.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been great.
The one thing I'd say is that we'll put a link in the description to our website, so people can then have a look online and see what kind of support we can offer. And there's lots of information there. So if they've got any questions, they might be able to just find it by kind of rummaging around the website and seeing what's there.
Yeah, of course. Well, that is all we have time for today. So I do want to thank you guys for watching. Thank you to everyone that sent questions. Please do like, share, subscribe. I sound like a YouTuber, but I feel like this is definitely a very informative podcast episode. So please do share it with anyone that you know that has questions about visas. Subscribe. There will be more episodes in the future. I know, Alex, you've kind of mentioned possibly
Yeah,
doing more episodes
yeah.
with us to go more into depth.
If that's something that people are interested in, then just drop a comment, and we're more than happy to have another chat about anything that listeners might want to know about. So
Yep, definitely. If there's anything you feel we've missed, as Alex says, drop a message. Messages on Instagram, any of our socials really, or drop us an email. And hopefully we'll have another episode that covers exactly what you need. But thank you, everyone.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye.